So I want to just discuss this with you because, again, I've done hundreds of these conversations, and it's just, I love picking at the nuance. Some people have said to me, like, as a brand, you should really build in the UK to begin with, and then one other market to show, you work in another market, like go narrow and deep. And then, so that's one sort of school of thinking. The other, which is, I think you can go too scattergun, where you're exporting into a gazillion different markets, and you're just like, what is this? Like, you've got one store in Costa Rica, one store in Japan. Like, what's your thoughts on brands who just go for those two countries? Or do you think that's actually quite a good strategy?
That is of the two you've identified, that is the strategy to go for. Because the objective of the exercise is not to build a business that you can say, I've got £5 million worth of sales from France. That's not the point. The point is you need to demonstrate to the ultimate buyer of the company, the multinational, that you have a brand that transcends boundaries. It's not a national brand, it's an international brand. So if you can pick... So if you're based in the UK and you launch in France and Germany, which are the two biggest countries in Europe for business anyway, if you launch there and it works, they need no more evidence that this is certainly a international in terms of European brand. No, it may not work in Africa, it may not work in Canada, who knows? But it's certainly work in Europe, and that's generally enough.
Yeah.
And so my approach, working with Thomas in this instance, is always to keep it fairly tight. And so if you take another example, because I'm always talking about Lily, if you took St Pierre...
that's what I wanted to say. They were massive in the States, right?
Well, that was the market that we were able to, when we sold that business, we were able to say, well, we're the brand leader in brioche in the UK and America. And that was
talk to me about
really
St Pierre, because it's been a kind of those wonderful brands that kind of is just like, kind of a bit like Cross Mollicus, slowly just was massive. I don't know if that, because obviously, but you don't see the big sort of LinkedIn hoo-ha, and obviously like, LinkedIn is very much a microcosm. It's not reality, right? But it's a fucking massive brand in
America.
In America.
Yeah.
So you come into St Pierre. How big is it when you go there? And then what did you do to get it going?
Yeah. Well, St Pierre, when I was chairman there for 3 years. And worked
what year was that? Sorry, just...
when did we exit that? I think I started there in probably 2019, or maybe 2018, and then exited about 2.5 years ago. Okay. But I did 3 years as chairman, working with the exec team and the founders. And then I did a year where the founders stepped up to chairman and I became the chief exec. And that year was really to exit the business.
Yeah.
And let them sort of take a step back, and I would do that. That's the selling part of the role. But first of all, I love working there because again, it was if you like a barbecue and you like the burger or hot dog, which I do, you can't beat that product as the bun that goes with the burger. So I always liked the product, and there wasn't anything quite like it, and it was It's a big market, obviously, the bread market, the rolls market, but they're not a huge amount. There is branding, but it tends to be branding like, like Hovis or Warburton's, which is a sort of an overarching brand, and then there are lots of different products underneath that.
Premium niche brick. Right?
Yeah, but there wasn't. I don't think there was much going on in premium there, and no one was doing brioche, which I found extraordinary because I always thought brioche was, the ultimate premium bread treat. Anyway.
Yeah, with a burger, you can't. It's in.
And once you've had a burger with a brioche bun, you are not going back to that crusty white roll. So,
or a hot dog, actually, for that matter.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
So, love the product. When I was first involved there, I first went in as chairman, it was more than half of it was private label. So we were making products for other people's brands, typically supermarket brands.
In the UK.
In the UK, but also in the States. So it was already in America before I got involved. And we had a big business, but it was private label. And then again, if you think about the end game, you're going to want to sell this to a multinational. They don't want to buy private label businesses. There's a number of things they need. So first of all, it needs to be an international brand. Secondly, it needs to be one brand. Now, people will disagree with me on this because lots of people build up their company by making acquisitions and end up with a stable of wonderful brands they'll describe.
So when you say one brand versus a house of brands, examples of that would be...
Well...
so St Pierre's one brand.
Everything I do is one brand.
Yeah.
They start off with more than one brand. So we've got more than one brand at Costa Rica. We have more than one brand at St Pierre. But when it's a multinational, they don't want 3 really good sort of medium-sized brands. They want one. But I'm a great believer in focus. You mentioned it earlier on. You can't focus on your main brand if you've got 3 main brands.
Okay.
So in order to get the best out of your business, you need to focus. But more importantly, I think selling a business that's made up of 2 or 3 or 4 brands to a multinational is going to be really hard work because they don't want that. The struggle you have with a multinational is, if I'm going to buy you, are you big enough that I don't crush you? So there are kind of rules.
Say that again. If I buy you, I'm big enough.
Are you big enough?
Yeah.
So I love your brand. You grow fast. You're cool. You're in the right category. But you only turn over 30 million, and I turn over 50 billion. The biggest failing, or the most frequent failing of a brand that gets acquired by a multinational, is it's so small that it gets crushed. It gets ignored. It gets stepped on. People forget about it. All sorts of things. But basically, it's not big enough to worry about. So the challenge, so they really like to buy businesses that are at least 50 million, and pushing towards 100 is great because then that's big enough.
Yeah, yeah.
If you've got 3 brands that make up your 50 million, they're 15 million each, that's going to be very hard to sell.
Yes, interesting.
So I have this argument up front because usually the entrepreneur has built up this, 2 or 3 brands, and they all do something different. Oh, we love it because this covers this part of the market. This is the premium bit. This is the cheaper end. This is the, I don't want to do that. I want to make it one brand. So it's only my personal opinion. I mean, people have sold businesses that are more than one brand, but I think it's not the right approach. It's best.
So what did you do at St Pierre? You consolidated it into...
Well, we were in 3 areas. We were in private label, so someone else's brand. Then we did Baker Street, and then we did St Pierre. And the company was called Cars Foods, which I could never understand because everyone went, "Oh, Cars Foods, is that like the water biscuits?" I said, "No, it's not the water biscuits." And after explaining that for about 10 times, I thought, why don't we just call the company St Pierre, because that's our brand? And actually changing the name of the company, changing the letterheads, changing the branding of the office so it was all orange and said St Pierre everywhere, did something to help everyone focus on the fact that it was all about St Pierre.
Yeah.
It said it everywhere rather than Cars Foods. So we focused on the one brand, and as I said, that the business was more than half private label, and we basically turned it into a branded business. So by the time we exited, I think it was over 80% brand. And in America, the brand did brilliantly. So it's the number 1 brioche brand in America. We had a very good distribution partner there, and we spent a lot of time over there. I mean, the thing about the US is it is the most attractive consumer goods market in the world. There's 320 million people. They have plenty of money, and they love a brand. Private label's relatively small there. So if you can make it work, that's the gold medal in what I do, if you can make it work. Usually it doesn't work because you can't be a part-time competitor in the world's most competitive market. You need to focus entirely on that. And usually in a small business, you've got other things going on in your home market, in your near-in international markets. So usually either doesn't work or you don't go there. But in this instance, we were already there. We changed the emphasis around to be more on branded, and it did work very well. And we got a fantastic exit. We sold the business to the biggest baker in the world called Bim.
How much for?
It was a very large amount of money.
Pardon the pun. Yeah.
It was a lot of money, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your e-com and accounting software. It's helped islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.